Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll introduce you to NCBA's new president and hear what he expects for the year ahead. Plus, lots of great highlights from this year's Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA trade show in San Antonio.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Thanks for joining us as we bring you special coverage from the 2020 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA trade show right here in San Antonio, Texas. We had an incredible turnout as thousands of cattlemen and women came to Texas for a mix of business, education, and networking with their peers from all across the country. We caught up with some attendees to find out why this is an event that members of the cattle industry can't afford to miss.
It's a great way to get together with producers that you've met in years past, see from different states, and just catch up on what's going on in the industry.
I think networking is the biggest thing. I enjoy meeting people and visiting with people from other parts of the country and visiting with them what they do with their operations and how they vary from what we do in eastern Colorado.
You get to meet and visit with people from all over the United States. And it's amazing when you sit down and you talk to them. Some of the same concerns that we have in Missouri, they have in Utah, they have all over. Same hay shortage and rain and grass and all that good stuff.
I guess I've been coming long enough that it's just kind of like old home week. You just come to see your old friends and find out what's going on in the industry and get updates and come to a warmer place. When you live in the north like we do, it's always nice to go to San Antonio where it's 70 degrees and, or Phoenix. And it's just great camaraderie and we just enjoy it.
They've decided a few years back to have all these conventions in a warm spot. So for me to come down here, it's a winter warm-up. And plus, you get to socialize and kind of get the pulse of the industry, where we're at, and what's kind of coming up and what's happened in the past. And so I think it's just, as history repeats itself, we just need to know what's coming forward.
Well, this is a place that you can see everything. It's a wish list for everything that you need to do. Sometimes you can't do it all at once, but if you're going to have a plan, this is a place to see it. I think we're seeing 7 acres of exhibits this week. Where can you go find a place like that? So the convention's a place to be.
One of the highlights of every cattle industry convention is the great speakers we get to hear from, and this year was no exception, being addressed by the United States Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Sonny Perdue. Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming back to the convention for the second time. And thank you for wearing that tie.
How about that?
That's fantastic. Last year when we were together, you'd mentioned that you had just told the president about the 3 top issues facing agriculture: trade, and trade.
That's right.
You've got some things to report for us this year.
Well, we do, yes. Obviously, some good news there. Obviously, I think the president, while some people were anxious, they really trusted him, and that's been validated. I think the Japan agreement, which is huge, obviously, for the cattle deal, phase 1 with China, getting beef back into China, with the age limitation and the MRLs loosened up there will be huge. Mm-hmm. And then the certainty of our Canadian and Mexican markets that we've depended on as well. So it's good news out there.
That is good news. And I understand through your presentation that you recently returned home from a trip to the European Union.
We did.
What opportunities do you think the beef industry has there?
I think there are huge opportunities, obviously some barriers, as you know. Okay. The Europeans have had designed some protocols and some non-tariff barriers that we think are unreasonable. They don't really comply with sound science. And we've got obviously Brexit, so we're going to focus on the UK. But also I think there's an opportunity, and speaking with their trade commissioner, Commissioner Hogan, I think there's a real opportunity for us to do something on some of these non-tariff trade barriers that could really open up the beef market to Europe that could be really healthy for them, healthy for us.
And I think you mentioned in your presentation many times it's about a number of base hits, not just one home run. Is that right?
I did. We talked about the 3 big ones: Japan, China, Canada, Mexico. But I was visiting with Ambassador Lighthizer last Friday, and we talked about all the singles and doubles.
You bet.
Ted McKinney's been out all over the world knocking on doors and promoting U.S. products. In fact, you might remember me saying I felt like we'd gotten maybe too dependent on that big Chinese market.
That's
so
right.
We'd love to spread our customer base out all over the world.
Diversify our risk for sure. You know, one of the other questions that we had for you, President Trump shared in his presentation, his State of the Union presentation, that the best days for the United States are ahead. Would you say the same thing for agriculture?
I definitely would. I think the technology advances that we see, the miracle of American agriculture, the productivity, that's what we're talking about. The productivity gains that we have seen over the last 90 years have inured to the American family and American consumer. I talked about the difference in our lower food costs in America than anywhere else in the developed world. That's what American farmers and ranchers have done for our American consumers. And that's really not only food security, but that's food accessibility and affordability.
Absolutely. You also shared a word that is critically important to the beef industry. That's sustainability. Give us your take on sustainability.
Well, again, you've got to be, farmers, I believe, have always been good environmentalists. We're not going to poison the ground because that's what we depend on for our livelihoods. But we got to communicate what we're doing, and we can always do better. We can develop a more circular system of using that manure that's developed and making sure we can find that and reuse it back on our farms in a more circular, sustainable system. So we're always learning better, hence whether it's digesters or what that we can go forward with to do that. But I think American farmers want to do that. We're making research in order to learn better techniques there. But we can be environmentally sustainable, we can be socially sustainable, but we're not economically sustainable. We can't support the other two.
Amen to that. It's a three-legged stool.
Right.
Mr. Secretary, you seem to enjoy coming to this convention, and I know folks enjoy hearing from you. What is it about this convention and cattle producers that you enjoy so much?
I like farmers all over. Obviously, these are some of the best that come to these associations and understand we've got a real responsibility to bring the message forward. We've kind of taken, farmers typically just kind of stayed behind the farm gate, proudly doing what they did, quietly going about their business. We can't do that anymore. The media and the consumer drive so much of this. We got to tell the great story of American agriculture loudly and proudly.
Mr. Secretary, on behalf of all beef cattle producers, I want to say thank you for all you've done for our industry and the agricultural industry at large. It is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to see you.
And when we return, we'll introduce you to this year's NCBA President, Marty Smith. Stay with us.
When it comes to the beef business, there's no room for gray area. The decisions being made in Washington affect the future of the beef industry, the livelihood of your fellow farmers and ranchers. Your National Cattlemen's Beef Association knows there's what benefits cattlemen and there's what doesn't. To us, it's as clear as black and white. Visit joinncba.org to learn more.
We didn't just design the 6M tractors with you in mind. We designed them with you by our side. The new 6M tractors from John Deere, reimagined by you, for you. With improved visibility, better maneuverability, and more ways to customize, so you get everything you need and nothing you don't. Experience the new 6M at your local John Deere dealer.
Welcome back. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association exists to serve the interests of its members, cattle producers from every state and all segments of the beef industry. That focus is reflected in the fact that NCBA officers are cattle producers who volunteer their time to serve in leadership roles. Let's head to Florida to learn a little more about the home operation of Marty Smith, the man serving as the 2020 NCBA president.
Raising cattle in Florida is just a little different. For example, at times, Marty Smith can be found on an airboat checking an area that will, in dry periods, provide grazing for his cows.
We are on Levy Lake, which is more of a marsh than it is a lake. It's several thousand acres in here of historic marshland. In drought times, this will go down. Will be somewhat dry out here. And when it dries out, it's got marsh grass, which is And what is the management? The management is stay out of the cow's way. They figure it out, and they know how to utilize this. And we open the gate, and they're going to come here because they know what's out here. And so you'll see them wading out here into the water sometime to eat the marsh grass. And we certainly think that as long as we can continue to run cattle here and utilize this, enjoy it, keep it the way that we do, take care of the water, take care of the resources, take care of the wildlife, which we take as part of our charge here and part of our role, that's a whole lot better than having a housing development.
In spite of intense development pressure in Florida, the Smith Brothers is a family ranch with a long history. A one-room church hand-built by Marty's great-grandfather in 1852 is still in use on the property, and the cattle herd is still here as well.
My family's operation here dates back to around 1850. So we say 170 years now of being in the cattle business in the state of Florida. My family originally settled here from South Carolina. Cattle have been in this area of the state dating back almost 500 years now. And cattle back then were really wild. And so when they came here, the original Florida cattle people were called cow hunters, not cattlemen, because they really hunted the cattle in the woods and in the swamps. So that's how they started here. And what we're looking at here today is Brangus and Brayford cattle for the most part. Historically, the Brahman cross cattle is what perform here. They're able to tolerate the heat. Our grass quality here is not what it would be really in any other part of the country. This is poor quality grass. We do have the ability though, because of, and we're standing here today in early January and the temperature's in the 70s and grass is growing today. So this is, we're unique in that regard. We can grow a lot of low quality forage. But we have to have an animal that's going to be able to convert low quality forage and make beef out of it. My wife and I have two boys. One just graduated from college, graduated from the University of Georgia a few weeks ago. The younger child is a freshman at Florida Southern down in Lakeland, Florida. Both of them are very interested though in the day-to-day operations here, willing to work here and willing to help.
With the help of his family and his crew, Marty leads the effort to manage the cattle, control brush, and maintain water quality and wildlife habitat. In addition, as a past president of the Florida Cattlemen's Association, Marty works to bring the cattle community together at his ranch, hosting friends, family, and those involved in the cattle business.
When we go and we sit down around, as we talk it, around the fire, nothing is off limits. Every opinion counts. Everything can be discussed. There's no, we can't talk about that. I want NCBA to operate that way. It's that team building that grows out of that, of being able to frankly discuss issues, problems, challenges, try to come to some unity, but joint decisions. And I invite people to come be part of that with me. I think really what I try to bring is this team building.
Building unity and service to the beef industry has become a Smith family tradition. Joanne Smith was the first female president of the National Cattlemen's Association back in 1985. Now, Marty takes the reins of NCBA with a view that the future is full of opportunities.
We all talk about global opportunities, and certainly we have seen some great headway made. And again, for those that say, well, NCBA doesn't do anything for me, look at the new Japan treaty where the tariffs have gone to a fraction of what they were, where the quotas have gotten raised, and that doesn't happen without an NCBA. It surely doesn't happen without this NCBA. And when they start talking about sustainability, and we're standing on land where cows were here 500 years ago, and you look at all the beef that's been produced here through the years, all the people that have been fed off of these Florida ranches, and yet if we turn our backs, it's not going to be that way anymore. We have got to do a lot as an organization, as an industry, to get that message out about what a great thing we're doing environmentally, what a great sustainable industry we are, but that future is ahead of us. And I think what we do here today, what we do as a group is what's going to make the difference, not just for ourselves, but more importantly for all the future generations that follow.
Whether he's checking on cows, hosting a steak fry, or leading a board meeting, Marty Smith is all in on the U.S. beef cattle industry. And he's committed to working through NCBA to preserve and protect the future for cattle operations like the one his family has called home for 5 generations.
It's kind of hard to beat this now, isn't it? We're standing here in January and it's like I say, it's somewhere between 70 and 80 degrees. The sun's out, grass is growing, calves are dropping. My family's been here with me, they'll be with me tonight, and there isn't anything quite as much fun being out in your cow pasture with your family, your friends. That's what this is about. And this is what, again, we're going to bring that same atmosphere to NCBA too, so come join, be part of it.
And joining us now is the 2020 president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, Marty Smith. Marty, why is it so important to you to volunteer so much time to this organization?
Kevin, my family's been involved in the beef industry for a long time, and I want to see that continued. I want to see that my kids have that opportunity to be a part of this great industry, to continue to be the caretakers for the land, for the environment, for the cattle. The only way that we're going to accomplish that in today's world is through the work that NCBA does on behalf of cattle producers all over this country.
And speaking of the work NCBA does, lots of wins in 2019. What would you define the state of the industry to be as we stand here at the beginning of 2020?
Certainly very positive right now. The trade deals that have been done over the last 12 months are just so big for us. NCBA has spent so much time Washington, D.C. and elsewhere working on those trade deals, particularly Japan, Europe, China, the USMCA deal that was just signed last week. Just tremendous opportunities for the U.S. beef industry going forward. At the same time, we had significant wins on issues like WOTUS, an issue that threatened every cattle producer really everywhere. And me being from Florida in a very wet area certainly had a big impact, or potentially devastating impact on us. So those wins going forward, just tremendous opportunities for us and a tremendous future ahead of us.
That's good news. And you know, as we talk about the industry, one thing that I notice is there still is a fair bit of infighting within the industry. And I've heard you talk a lot about the T word, trust, and wanting to rebuild trust. How does that play out in your year as president?
Trust comes from making promises and delivering on those promises. Okay. Certainly NCBA, I think, has delivered the promises that it's made. When we talk about these trade issues, when we talk about just the overall business climate and environment that we face today, the NCBA has delivered so much on that. But that's where we've got to keep doing that. We've got to keep delivering with both in Washington and around the world, showing that we are the definitive voice for the cattle industry in the United States.
Another sensitive topic, Marty, and one that has created some of that division is traceability. It's something we've been talking about a long time, but we still find ourselves being laggards in a global industry. How do you approach the topic of traceability, and what's your plan for the year ahead?
We've got to tackle traceability head on. We've got to continue to work on this. Our customers, our consumers, both in this country and around the world, expect that. And our competitors out there, regardless of what country we talk about, all of the other beef exporting nations have some form of traceability program in place, but they're not delivering American beef like we are. We've got the better product. Why don't we want it to be traceable? That's true with our own consumers here in the U.S. They want to know where it came from, how it was raised. They want to know that it's been done properly. We know that it has. We do it that way. Right. With our beef quality assurance program, with all of the various things that NCBA and our industry supports. We've got to get that message out there. It takes that traceability for us to do that. We come from an industry where our brand is such a big deal to us. Sure. Always has been. Yeah. And yet we're not yet to a point where we're putting our brand on our own animals, and we've got to do that.
Make some changes. Well, certainly a challenge ahead, but one I'm certain you're up to. And one last question, as you take the reins of leadership for this organization, what's the one message you have for our viewers?
It takes a team to accomplish all of this, and we want all cattle producers all over this country to be part of our organization. Not just be part of our organization, just joining doesn't do it. Joining, becoming an active member, helping us both domestically, internationally, with consumers all over the globe. That's how we're going to achieve a lot and bring the beef industry where we need to.
Marty, thank you so much for the leadership you and your family have demonstrated over so many years in our organization. We're looking forward to having you on the show a number of more times throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, to keep up to date on the issues facing cattlemen and women and to help make a difference in the industry, why not join Marty as a member of NCBA? It's easy to do. Just call 1-866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. Still to come on this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll look back at some of the big policy wins for NCBA in 2019 and discuss the important issues the organization will tackle this next year. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Simmons Brothers Limousine in Amherst, South Dakota is a fourth-generation family operation that treats their cattle and their customers right.
Service is one of our number one criteria. We offer a first-year unconditional guarantee on the bulls.
Simmons Brothers breeds top-quality limousine bulls and females, focusing on the traits and the production that will put money in their customers' pockets.
They were commercial cattlemen before they came into the limousine business. They're cattle feeders. They really know the kind of genetics that it takes to be successful.
We're trying to bring a bull that our customer would be able to put on any set of cows, and those calves could earn a premium when he brings them to the sale barn.
You can depend on limousine genetics from Simmons Brothers. Don't miss their 40th annual production sale at 1 p.m. Central Time, Thursday, February 27th. Call today to get a sale catalog and to find out more.
Welcome back. One of the great things about the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is the work the organization does in Washington, D.C. on behalf of cattle producers all across the country. And joining me now to discuss some of the key issues is Ethan Lane, NCBA's Vice President of Government Affairs. Ethan, 2019 saw some incredible wins for the beef cattle industry. Tell us about a few of those.
Nothing in this industry, and particularly in Washington, D.C., happens overnight. What we've seen in the last few months is really unprecedented, but it's the result of years and in some instances decades of work by NCBA, our leadership, our affiliates around the country to put some of these issues to bed, to gain some of the market access we've seen through some of these trade deals just in the last few months alone. Access to the Japanese market with a competitive tariff rate, that's our biggest overseas market, $2 billion a year, a deal with the Chinese that could result in billions of dollars in trade there, as well as some of those non-tariff trade barriers being reduced that really have been an issue for us, not just in that discussion in China, but in Europe and elsewhere, setting that tone and finally achieving a USMCA deal that gets us back to work here in North America with our trading partners to the north and south. Those are just tremendous wins for our producers as far as expanding market access, but we've spent just as much time here at home working on that regulatory environment. We came into this administration with a plan. We knew we had a few years to really work with this administration and try to find some common ground for some of those long-standing issues, whether it's the National Environmental Policy Act or Waters of the United States that's haunted this industry for a very long time. And so it's gratifying to see, the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into these issues for years all start to kind of pop and get to the finish line. And of course the work is never done. And even when we get those regulations out the door, there's always the detractors, and whether it be in the activist community or somewhere else, that are going to go to court and they're going to try different things to stop these things from moving forward. But the good news is these things take time because they're done correctly, and we have sound policy to lean back on and defend. So that's good news for cattle producers. It means that we have a horizon to look to that's going to be a little bit more free of federal regulation and intervention into their business, and allow them to get back to producing protein and living the life they want to live on their operations. And that's really exciting. It's been a fun year to see that. It's nice to see wins hit all the different segments of the industry. When you feel like we're doing things for everybody, that
hitting on all cylinders.
Hitting on all cylinders, and what a neat opportunity, because you feel like no one's being left out, right? I mean, we represent a lot of different interests around here, and it's cool to see that we're putting points on the board for everybody.
So I want to follow up on one of the things you said, and that was the deal with China. Great deal. It was obviously celebrated by all of agriculture, but I think some confusion about what could it mean for the beef cattle industry specifically.
Well, the China deal is interesting because our issue there hasn't been tariffs. We've been focused in places like Japan on those tariff rates. In the Chinese market, it's been those non-scientific trade barriers. It's been discussions about hormones or some of those key technologies that we use to bring cattle to market. And China has taken a position in the past of sort of sticking on some of those things and using that as a lever to keep us out of the marketplace. This deal reduces some of those, or in some cases eliminates them completely. It adds in a component of recognizing our traceability system here in the United States as being acceptable for cattle going into that market. So that's going to touch off producers around the country looking at how they're raising their cattle and figuring out if they meet those specs or not. And there's enough good news in that agreement that I think a larger percentage than we were even expecting are going to be able to say, hey, I'm in that category. And I think once those things start to click, we're going to start to see product move in that direction. Everyone has been talking about the ASF situation. The Chinese market is hungry for protein. Yeah. We're seeing that in the world export market. We're seeing that in countries like Brazil that are sending a lot of product to China, the Australians and others, and this is going to give us an opportunity to play in that arena as well. And that's good news for producers.
Absolutely. Let's talk 2020. What are some of the key priorities for NCBA this next year?
Well, it's an election year, and that means that we have definitely a different calendar to work with. Congress has to go home and run for Congress again here in a few months, and once they do, it gets very difficult to get much done in Washington. But we have a lot of these wins that we've moved across the finish line that we need to make sure we shepherd and implement properly. The Farm Bill we've been implementing since last year. Right. That's not just limited to the Farm Bill. Anytime you have a statute coming out of Washington, anytime you have any of these new rules, there's the celebration, and then there's the hard work of turning wrenches and making sure that it works right for producers on the ground. And that'll occupy a lot of our time this year, finishing up that regulatory agenda, those key items. We have a lot of work left to do on the Endangered Species Act. We have rules that we're now in court defending that the administration pushed out earlier this year, probably the most transformational change to the Endangered Species Act in a generation. The NEPA rules, as we move that through to a final product, we're still waiting on some species delistings, the gray wolf, in parts of the country where that's a problem. We're expecting some relief on that front before the end of this year. Grizzly bears. There are a lot of those key issues that if they're your problem in your backyard, they're your biggest problem. And we want to make sure we solve as many of those as possible. And obviously, we're not done on trade. When we have those big priorities, we had a clean sweep on our trade front this year. So we're looking to new markets this year. We had Brexit is now a reality. Right. There are going to be conversations to be had there. There's more to talk about with the Europeans and elsewhere in the world. And we're just getting started. One of the things that's dominant in that conversation, though, is sustainability and telling the good news, a good story about what our industry does on the ground. And we've been in a defensive posture, and I think it's natural to do that. But boy, what an opportunity we've had in the last year when we put the Green New Deal out of its misery earlier this year with a 57-0 vote in the U.S. Senate. A lot of people looked at that and saw us taking a different role. We went on offense, and we spent our time talking about our excellent environmental record, the fact that our emissions footprint is only 2% of greenhouse gas in the United States, and what a difference that is between us and the rest of the world. We should be exporting that model as well as our product. We're doing it right here.
I would agree. Every time I turned around this last year, it seemed like I was constantly seeing a picture with NCBA in a photo op with the president. And clearly, partially due to the number of wins we had. But what does that say about the relationship the NCBA has on Capitol Hill?
We have a staff that is absolutely unparalleled in Washington. And it's been one of the most humbling moments in my career over the last few months to follow Colin Woodall as the head of the DC office. These are some of the most talented professionals I've ever worked with. And the depth of information that they have and the connections and the relationships that they've fostered in their different areas. I sit in staff meeting on Monday morning with a table of 20 people in our Washington, DC office. And they are subject matter experts in all of their respective areas. That's humbling. It takes us an hour and a half to get around the table in staff meeting, but it's humbling. And it speaks to what this industry has as far as a tool chest in Washington, D.C. And those things also don't happen overnight. Those relationships and trust from the agencies, both career and political staff, the White House, learning that NCBA is a partner they can rely on, that we're going to do what we say we're going to do, and that we're going to call you out when you don't do right by this industry, that's a powerful tool. That's something that we're very protective of. We want to make sure that we don't ever lose that, and that takes a lot of work. But it's been fun to watch because we're hitting on all cylinders, as you said earlier. It's been a fun time.
It's exciting. And one last thing, legislative conference is just around the corner now. What do our viewers need to know about legislative conference?
A few changes this year. We are not charging a registration fee for legislative conference this year. We want to make sure we get a good showing in Washington. We want those boots on Capitol Hill. Nothing makes more of an impact than seeing hundreds of cowboy hats up on the Hill talking to their members of Congress. We always talk about this. I'd love to believe that members of Congress are really interested in what I have to say, but they're only interested in what my team and I have to say because of who we're speaking for. So when we bring those folks back to Washington to speak on behalf of this industry, people listen. And that's when we really get some attention, and the follow-up for weeks after that meeting is amazing because, so we want to make sure as many folks can take advantage of that as possible. Getting rid of that registration fee, we're going to have a great event. We're going to be at the Trump International Hotel in Washington. We're going to have some good speakers. We're going to lead some agency meetings. It's going to be a great couple of days, and what an opportunity to make an impact for the industry.
Well, thank you for the impact you've already made, and keep up the good work in D.C. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, if you'd like to stay up to date on all the issues and events from Washington, D.C., one way is by becoming a member of NCBA. When you join, you'll get the Beltway Beef newsletter. That's a weekly update straight from Washington that provides valuable insight on the key policy initiatives that may impact your business. To join, just call 1-866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll introduce you to the national winner of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Stay with us. We're back from San Antonio right after this.
Don't miss the 2020 NCBA Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. It's your opportunity to meet with congressional and federal agency leaders to let them know where cattlemen and women stand on critical issues that impact the cattle business and our way of life. Together, we can do more. Make plans to be in Washington, D.C., March 31st to April 2nd for the 2020 NCBA Legislative Conference. Details at ncba.org.
And with me now is the 2019 winner of the Environmental Stewardship Award, the Blackbeards Ranch of Florida, Jim Strickland and Julie Morris. Jim, what does this award mean to you?
Well, I tell you, we've been in Florida and been in the cattle business since about 1840. But looking out at the rest of these winners from all these different regions, I am in awe. One, that we won. But two, the stories that they all have to tell. So that's what it's all about, is we need to tell our story. So whether you're in Florida, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, it doesn't matter. But we go from 292 acres tonight to 125,000 acres of this ownership of NCBA participants, members. It is awe-inspiring, and we should very well embrace these people and use them to tell our story, because we have to tell our story.
It is inspiring. And Julie, you face some unique challenges down there. You mentioned that you're, within 15 minutes of the fastest growing urban area in the United States. What does that mean in terms of the importance of environmental stewardship?
So I think a lot of people don't realize in Florida, even folks that are from Florida, that just outside that urban boundary are cattle ranches, and cow-calf operations are what's keeping the middle of our state green. And when you talk about special challenges for land stewardship, in Florida, we have to burn, right? We have exotics. We have, every single kind of exotic coming in, because we're ground zero for that. We're a tropical environment. And it makes management a lot more challenging when we're surrounded, more and more by, the urban interface and folks moving in. So it's really important that we do tell the story of how these ranch lands are so critical to our wildlife and our water and, the future of Florida.
You talk about telling this story, Jim. You've been telling the story long before you won this award. You've made it a point to get people out to your ranch to see some of those things. What do you say to our viewers who say, you know what, I don't have time, or I don't have a story, or let somebody else do that because we just simply are not good at communicating? What do you say to people like that?
One of the most represented people of what they do in the United States of America are farmers and ranchers. We go back to that Super Bowl story where they talk about God created a farmer. You have the ability. I don't care whether you have 10 acres or 10,000 acres, that we all can be honest and forthright about what we do. But also keep in mind that we need to couple ourselves with the scientists, the researchers, the data, to which we can defend what we say, because they're going to believe us at the very beginning, but there will be naysayers. So people like Julie Morris, that is a scientist, that is an ecologist, a conservationist, and the group that we have, a Florida Conservation Group, we have Dr. Tom Hochter, we have professors, we have people of which we can acquire that data, use that data, and then tell our story. We need to working with scientists and researchers that can help us tell our story. We're pretty honest. I don't care whether you're a great speaker, you're a great person, and you can tell that story in a great way.
It's a great challenge to us all, and you all are wonderful representatives for our entire industry. Let's take a closer look at the 2019 Environmental Stewardship Award winner, Blackbeard's Ranch.
On Blackbeard's Ranch, Brian Jones and his cowboy crew are working to beat the heat of the day by moving cows and calves just after sunrise. The 4,500-acre ranch was purchased by Galinsky Enterprises in 2014 and is managed by Florida cattleman Jim Strickland.
My family has been in Florida for 6 generations. We've always been in the cattle business. The cattle here on the ranch consist of cattle that we have kept for generations, that we've adapted to this environment for generations. And the cattle herds, we have a Brangus cattle herd, we have a Beefmaster cattle herd, and then we have a crossbred cattle herd that are mixtures of Brangus, Beefmaster, and Brayford.
Today in Southwest Florida, houses are going in where cows were once grazing. That makes Blackbeard's Ranch highly valuable as open space.
We are right outside of the second fastest growing planned residential development in the United States. So we have a unique opportunity to tell people about ranch lands, about water, about what us ranchers do for Florida.
We're under a lot of pressure around the state for people to develop, and Jim just caught on fire, if you will, in the last 5 to 6 years promoting conservation, and actually has formed a group of ranchers called the Florida Conservation Group, and they're all like-minded ranchers who are very interested in preserving as much country as possible, but keeping it in private hands.
We really want to tell the story here and show that cattle ranching is critical if we want to protect our native wildlife populations, if we want to protect clean water downstream, because the alternative is development.
Today, Blackbeard's Ranch is a place where cattle are thriving. The land is improving and critical wildlife habitat is being protected. Jim came up with the name Blackbeard's Ranch in recognition of the pirate history in this area of Florida. But his vision for this land goes far beyond what any pirate could dream.
A lot of people say, well, Jim, are you looking for the silver and the doubloons and the jewels and the sapphires and the rubies that Blackbeard or one of those pirates buried? I said I would love to find it, but the real treasure is the land itself. So we're looking forward to the future here. There's a lot of variables out there. Are we still improving? Every day.
Each year, the Environmental Stewardship Award Program recognizes the nation's best cattle operations for their stewardship and conservation efforts. And nominations for the 2020 Environmental Stewardship Award are now open. To learn more about how to nominate someone, visit the website environmentalstewardship.org. When we come back, we'll talk with the head of the Natural Resources Conservation Service about his organization's involvement with the ESAP program. Stay with us.
Your land is more than a business. It's a heritage that has been passed down from those who tended it before you, by those who shaped it, changed it, and cared for it. Your land has a legacy, one that you carry on, but also one you build on. At Corteva Agriscience, we are the stewards of a lasting legacy. We have a responsibility to Dow AgroSciences to maintain the relationships and trust they built, and to build upon those foundations. To help you care for your land, to provide innovations that help you protect the hard work and investment you've poured into it. To help you build a legacy that can be passed on for generations to come. Corteva Agriscience.
Welcome back to Cattlemen. I'm here with the Chief of the United States Natural Resource Conservation Service, Chief Matt Lohr. Chief Lohr, this is the second year you've been to our Environmental Stewardship Award program. What's your take on the evening?
I tell you, Kevin, first of all, it's great to be back with you again. Last year when I came was like my first month on the job. Blown away then and blown away now just to see the stories, to meet the families, to see the passion they have, the commitment to that next generation. It's very inspiring. So as someone who's working with conservation every day, I love this event. I love to meet these farmers and ranchers because they are the future.
You're not just here as a guest, though. NRCS is a partner with us in this program. Why is it so important for NRCS to partner with NCBA and recognizing these outstanding ranching families?
Well, first of all, it's a great honor for us to be a partner along with the other sponsors that put the ESAP Award together. We care deeply about conservation across the landscapes, and of course our cattlemen and cattlewomen, they are true stewards of the land. They're protecting our grassland, our grazing land, our forage land. To be able to help them and work with them to make the best conservation practices and efforts on their farm and ranch is very important. So for us to be a part of that is great, and be able to recognize the award winners tonight is so very important.
What many of our viewers may not know is there are NRCS offices, obviously, in every county waiting to partner and support each one of us in some of our efforts. Tell us about some of the programs you have locally for farmers and ranchers across the country.
We always like to say that regardless of what the resource concern is, there's a program to be able to help and assist that. You said about 2,500 USDA service centers across the country that we have almost 10,000 employees in those offices. So if a farmer is looking, they have some type of resource concern on their operation, stop into one of the local offices and we'll have staff come out, do an assessment, maybe put a conservation plan together, and see many times there's a farm bill program that can match up with that concern to provide cost share dollars to help so they don't have to do it alone. So certainly reach out to your local office and they'll be happy to help.
And one last question, as we think about just telling the story of environmental stewardship, clearly you spend a lot of time traveling all across this country telling that story. What would you tell our viewers tonight in terms of how they can be better spokespeople for what agriculture is doing for our land and our environment?
You know, I think sometimes farmers and ranchers get a bad rap. We, as an industry, are so progressive and doing so much good work when it comes to addressing our natural resources, but it's very important to make sure that we're involved, we're active, we're telling that story. Farmers learn from farmers. So I love to say, you know, I work for the government, but when a farmer is able to share their story with another producer, it really makes a lasting impact. So in our communities across the country, there's a lot of great work being done. So again, reach out to your local office and reach out to your local farmers that are actually exceeding in conservation.
Thank you for all you do for our organization and for agriculture in general. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Kevin. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And we'll be back with more Cattlemen to Cattlemen right after this.
If you're looking for outstanding forage-developed Angus cattle, then look no further than Yon Family Farms in Ridge Springs, South Carolina. The Yon family is hosting their 30th annual spring sale at 11 a.m. on February 15th at the farm. They're offering 225 bulls and 75 females. Proven genetics from a family committed to their customers. Find out more about the spring sale at the website yonfamilyfarms.com.
Speaking about funny, Baxter Black has put together a 6-hour, 3-DVD collaboration of nonstop agro humor. Baxter has been entertaining farmers and ranchers from Johnny Carson to Elko, Dolly Parton to Las Vegas, and Ark City to Martin, Tennessee. Treat yourself. It's like being there. 3 DVDs for $25. Call 800-654-2550 or BaxterBlack.com. Did I say non-educational?
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at Prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
The banker took his ledger out, the rancher took a seat. Let's see, I'll lend you 20 thou for cattle, corn, and wheat. Let's talk about your cattle first. The rancher's face looked pained. You know how bad the market's been. I lost 15, he explained. 15 what? 15 cents a pound or 15 died of thirst? No, $15,000 lost. But hey, it could be worse. Because the hogs got sick and my son got drunk and joined the Moonies church, and I figure I'm down 40 thou. But hey, it could be worse. What do you mean it could be worse? That ain't even funny. The rancher shrugged and then replied, could have been my money. The rancher sat across the desk applying for a loan. He'd never borrowed cash before, he'd made it on his own, but times were hard, as he explained, and if they only could, he'd like to borrow 20 grand. Well, the banker understood. That doesn't sound unreasonable, although it's quite a lot. Your cows can be collateral. How many cows you got? 200 head, the rancher said. That's give or take a few. Well, that's enough, the banker said. Of course, there's interest due. In 3 months' time, the rancher came and paid the loan in full, but in his poke he had some left that was expendable. Why don't you leave that cash with me? The banker said, content. You put your money in my bank, I'll pay you 8%. The rancher paused. Now let me see. You gave me 20 grand, and then I paid you extra back for lending me a hand, and now I give you this pile of cash, and you pay me this time the extra that I done forked out at slightly over prime. The banker nodded helpfully and lit himself a smoke. The rancher seemed to cogitate, and then he finally spoke. Well, I ain't too good at high finance, but you put me on the spot. Fair is fair. So tell me, sir, how many cows you got? This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter. Sounds like that banker met his match. Now don't go away. We'll be back with more from San Antonio right after this. Stay with us.
For commercial cow-calf producers, crossbreeding with Gelbvieh and Balancer is the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. Gelbvieh and Balancer females offer maternal superiority through increased fertility, greater longevity, and more pounds of calf weaned per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer cattle deliver increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and excellent carcass merit. Balancer adds the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. Gelbvieh and Balancer, the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. Find out more at the website gelbvieh.org.
Out here, you know what needs to be done, and you know what it means to those you're doing it for. But every sunrise brings something new, with the weather, the soil, the markets, your machinery. You can't always predict what it will be. So it's good to know that Ram trucks are more than capable of helping you get it done right.
When the field is your office, you never get tired of going to work. Cut, rake, bale, repeat. New Holland offers the power and versatility to get through the day. From small squares to large squares and everything in between, New Holland has you covered. Visit your local dealer today to find out more.
Welcome back to Cattlemen. Putting together the 2020 Cattle Industry Convention in San Antonio took a monumental effort, and the NCBA trade show alone required months of planning and a few hard days of setting up. The Cattlemen crew captured that work from start to finish. Have a look. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.